Geraldine Jamieson on Manx Radio.
Hello and a very warm welcome to this week's programme, and I'm delighted to welcome my guest, the very fine actress and singer Gemma Craven, whose international career spans theatre, film and television. Well, all this past week, Gemma has been starring in the Anthony Williams production of the highly entertaining musical Copacabana, staged at our own Gaiety Theatre here in Douglas, of course. Well, Gemma, you played the role of Conchita Alvarez, the singer and dancer, now ageing star, who was being surpassed by this young showgirl Lola, yellow feathers in her hair, etc. And of course everyone will be familiar with the Barry Manilow version of the title number, Copacabana. It's the very epitome, really, of spectacular entertainment. Leave your brains at home, song, dance, real showbiz, toe-tapping stuff. And I would have thought an ideal role to utilise all your talents.
Well, I must say it's fun to do. And it does a couple of the lines that David, who plays Rico, has to say about, old woman and ageing star. And I think, oh, God, I'm not really that old. Touches a nerve a little bit, But it's a terrific, really terrific role to play. I mean, I do get to dance a bit and wear some of the most incredible costumes. I mean, really fantastic. I feel terribly dowdy when I take them off. And, the acting side of it is lovely. It's actually, it's a very, very simple tale. As you say, take your brains out, leave them at home, because you really don't need them. It's just very simple. But it is quite moving as well.
There's lots of comedy, but there's no really dark areas to it, although there is a cream passionelle.
Oh, yes, there is. But we're not going to give that away. Well, I can, actually, because we're finished now anyway, till next year, so yes. But, yes, I do get to get my own back. I really do, which is rather good. And actually, the first night was quite fun. And your producer, Ben, was in that night. And when I actually shot him at the end, everybody cheered. And the poor chap, he felt terrible afterwards. He was dreading it when he was doing his curtain call. He thought that they'd all be booing him, a bit like Panto,
Well, as you say, it's very important, in fact it's vital, to be able to sing, dance, as well as act nowadays in the theatre, isn't it?
Well, it does help. It does help. I mean, I've always done it because I get terribly bored. If I'm just doing a play for like a year or something, I then get itchy feet because then I want to do a musical, I want to do some singing, I want to do some dancing. Although I do find now, I mean, I've been in the business 34 years now, so I do find now I'm starting to settle down a bit. I would like to just do some plays and, theatre or television, film, whatever, but just the plays, because you do find the singing and the dancing, it is getting a little bit exhausting now, and I think, no, it's time to grow up now, Gems.
You must have been a child actress. I must. It's not visual, so our audience can't see just how attractive, of course, Gemma Craven is. But
thank you.
So you've seen a few theatres in your life, I mean, especially the West End. How does our Gaiety, Frank Matcham Theatre, size up?
Oh, it's beautiful. It really, really is. But I just love Matcham Theatres. I mean, they have another glorious one over in Belfast that we were talking about earlier. And they are just, they're stunning, beautiful theatres, and they're always looked after so well. People care for them, and it shows.
Here's the crux of the story, though, because I believe you're quite strong on the fact that so much money is very often spent, on the auditorium, of course. Well, obviously the paying
of course,
audience
that's where
is
the
very
bums are on
important,
seats.
exactly.
Yes, indeed.
And even, of course, the exterior of the theatre is important as well.
Yes.
But what is left behind is backstage, and particularly the dressing rooms.
Yes, they are always left out. Always. And it is it's criminal. It really is.
I mean,
it's criminal.
How bad are they? You talk about a mouse running across the facilities, and that was behind a West End theatre. Mind you, they're all very old, of course.
Oh, I tell you, some of the West End theatres, you wouldn't if you had to go backstage into the dressing rooms, say, it was your job, you'd turn around and walk out again. You'd say, I'm sorry, I am not putting up with these conditions. I mean, I see people, go to the European courts and all this, that and the other. Actors, no, we put up with everything, but some of them really, you really do it for your art, because no one in their right minds would put up with some of the things we have to put up with.
And if you're there for, a few weeks or even months, Gemma, particularly, like yourself in the starring roles, it's sort of home.
It is home.
I presume you're tempted to come in with a duster and the jiffy and
it
get
has
cracking.
It has been known, if I've been in a theatre for any length of time, it has been known that I've been in there with the old Mr. Muscle and the Flash and the God knows what else, scrubbed the place top to bottom, took the curtains down, repainted it myself, and had curtains made and put them back up. Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, if you're going to be there, as you say, for any length of time, you've got to be comfortable, and you can't work. You can't work surrounded by grubbiness and mess. It's because you've got to be focused for what you're there for, And if you're afraid to, I mean, let's face it, you have to get undressed in these rooms. And if you're afraid to take your clothes off because the floor is too mucky and you don't know what's on it and you might stick to it, you're not going to be in the right frame of mind to go on that stage and go, hey, folks, I'm here to entertain you.
I mean, of course, we're all human, and you have to be trained and quite sure to leave your personal troubles, behind.
Oh, indeed.
But when you
yes.
come, as you say, to your dressing room and find that that's not going to help you improve your the right frame of mind, as you say, you're on a losing battle. Well, now, I'm sure many of my listeners will recognise your voice and will say, now, Gemma Craven, yes, we certainly remember the name and so on, and she's done lots, but what exactly? I think probably one of your first biggest breaks anyway, and certainly it came to mind when I heard that you were coming to the Isle of Man, was, of course, Cinderella in the Bryan Forbes film The Slipper and the Rose, and Richard Chamberlain, I think, was in that.
That's he. Oh, he certainly was.
Now, this was very...
Big feature.
Big feature. But not as big as you, actually, because this actually brought you 2 major film awards.
Yes.
The Variety Club's Film Actress of the Year and the Evening News Film Awards Most Promising New Actress. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this must have been absolutely wonderful for you. Such a good start.
Oh, it was incredible. I had been doing theatre and television up until that point. And I had, I'd also had my first lead in the West End. But to do this was just the icing on the cake. It was unbelievable, because the cast list read like a who's who. And we are talking really, really established, wonderful actors and actresses, Michael Hordern and Margaret Lockwood, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm working with these people, and they were just so wonderful to me. And so helpful, because they knew I'd never done a film before. I didn't know what to do. Bryan Forbes himself was phenomenal. And he said, just do exactly as I say, because with filming, if you just turn your head 1/4 of an inch too much, it ruins the shot. You have to do it again, because they get a profile rather than whatever it was he wanted. Tiny things like that you don't know. And they really were incredible. I mean, they taught me that side of a craft that I didn't know.
But filming takes forever.
Oh,
they do
yes.
about 2 or 5 minutes. Whereas,
if you're lucky.
if you're doing, it's so different from theatre, stage theatre.
Yeah, well, theatre obviously is instant. Once the show opens, you're there. It is a solid 2.5 hours from beginning to end. You have to keep your energy throughout the day. You can't just go off wandering about and doing whatever you like. You have to reserve your energy that whole day for that 3 hours at night, because that's what your job. That's what you're paid to do. Filming, you're up. I mean, I've been known to be up, 4 o'clock in the morning, and you go in, you have your makeup done, your hair done, everything, and then you start. And you could still be there, like on beautiful days like this, if you're filming outside, you could be filming till 10 o'clock at night, to try and get as much done as you can. So your energy...
you've no audience to lean on.
No, you have absolutely nothing. I mean, you could do a take, say, 20 times, and you have to do it the same every time. And the reason it sometimes takes that long is because a cloud comes over, or an aeroplane goes by, or a car beeps its horn. And the shot's ruined. You have to do it again. So your energy, is spread out for the whole of that day, and it's a totally different technique altogether. It can be quite strenuous.
What did these two major film awards mean to you? I mean, obviously, they were fantastic, of course.
Oh, they were incredible.
But I always remember somebody saying to me, I think it was Anthony Quayle, actually, after he did the most successful film, the Sea film, I can't remember the name of it now, In Which We Serve, I think it was. Anyway, whichever. And he said, he was expecting that he would be inundated with offers of work afterwards. He did nothing for 9 months. The phone never rang.
No, it always happens. It always happens. Because people think that because you've got these awards and because the film is so successful and everything, that people are going to be clamouring after you, knocking on the door. You're either going to be busy, or you would then command too much money, or it's a role that you wouldn't consider playing, so they don't bother approaching you, and you're sitting there going, hello, hello, I'd like a job, please. Thank you very much.
They call it resting, don't they? Resting between
No, I
roles.
call it being out of work. But my mum loved them anyway. She's got them on the mantelpiece. I wasn't allowed to have them.
Well, the film credits did actually roll in for you, I know, and it was the epic Wagner, in which you played the composer's tragic first wife, Minna. That was opposite Richard Burton. Now, of course, superb actor, charismatic galore on the screen,
Yes.
but generous to actors, budding actresses like yourself?
Definitely. I mean, he was quite amazing. We spent a lot of time together, Richard and I. I think it was about 8 months we were working together on that. And again, an incredible cast list, but the cast list for that was sort of spread from major stars all over the world. And by that I mean, some of them didn't speak English. So that was very strange. But Richard was phenomenal, and many's the time when we were in Hungary, we were in Budapest, and the weather was just atrocious, really atrocious, and we couldn't film, so we were stuck in the trailer, for days on end. And he always asked me into his trailer. And he really, really took me under his wing, and he was most complimentary about my performance. The first scene I did was one of the hardest, heaviest acting scenes I've had to do.
Because Wagner is heavy.
Oh, yes. And this particular scene I had to do was after he had thrown me out and shut the door on me, and it was dialogue. It was about a 5-minute dialogue, just me on my own on the floor, and then just bursting into tears and the whole thing. And it was my first day I'd arrived, and I met him, obviously, but I hadn't done the scene with him because it's always, it's never in sequence either, And
Highly confusing.
Oh, yes. And of course, there I was doing this scene with him watching me. And I thought, oh, my God, this is make or break, because, he could turn around and say, forget it, get rid of her, she's rubbish, So,
Which I reckon he
talk
probably
about no
would
pressure.
have.
Oh, yes, he would. I mean, talk about no pressure. My God, I was terrified. Terrified. So anyway, the director, we rehearsed where he wants me to come through the door and, slam the door and sit down and the exact position for the cameras and what have you. So I said, okay, we'll go for a take. I said, well, aren't you going to rehearse it? No. He said, well, we'll go for a take. He said, you're an actress, go on, go for it. Oh, I thought, dear God, please help me. So anyway, I thought, right, get into this. So we go for a take, and I do the scene. You have to switch off everything that's there and just do it. Just be that person and do it. So we did it. Okay, cut. You could have heard a pin drop from a mile away. There was not a sound in this vast room that we were in. Not a sound. And I thought, right, okay, that's it. You're on the next plane home. And Richard came up to me, and he picked me up off the floor, and he put his arms round me, and he just said, magnificent. And everybody applauded, and we just did the one take. And I just went, oh! And I just burst into tears.
Was Elizabeth around, Elizabeth Taylor?
No, not at that time, no. He was just divorced from Susie Hunt at the time. And he was a free man, but he was still in contact with Elizabeth. And the funny stories, he actually, we had long chats in the trailers and all that, and I used to argue with him. And he'd say, my God, you're just like Elizabeth. I thought, oh, thank you very much. Can I have a ring too? He was wonderful. He really was wonderful.
Well, you talk about the pressures of acting and so on and all that. But particularly if a husband and wife are in the same business, then that must be desperate. And it did happen to you because you were married to Fraser Hines.
Yes.
Everybody will recognise the name out of Emmerdale.
Yes.
And that didn't
If you
work
blinked,
out.
you missed it, yes. That's how short it was.
What, the marriage or Emmerdale?
No, Emmerdale's still going.
But it is very difficult, isn't it, really? I mean, especially, there must surely be competitiveness, between you both. I always think of that.
Well, I don't see why. I mean, he obviously found that, but I don't see why, because I can't do what he's doing because he's a man and I'm a woman. So it always, to me, it just doesn't make sense unless, one is more successful than the other. And it is difficult if the woman, I suppose, is more successful than the man because it's that male ego thing. Mm-hmm. But, if you're married, surely, you should be proud of your partner, but I don't know, I'm just old-fashioned.
Now, one of your most contrasting, shall we say, television roles included playing Joan, and that was in Dennis Potter's acclaimed series, Pennies from Heaven.
Yes.
In fact, Joan, you were the wife, actually, of Bob Hoskins in
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, he was a super chap.
Oh, he was a hoot. He really was. Because Bob and I also did a stage show together. And it was just so hilarious because we had these dance routines that Gillian Lynn choreographed, and she's an amazing choreographer.
Oh, yes.
And he just, his language, oh my God, it would turn the air blue. It really would. But it was just so funny. So doing Pennies with him was a hoot.
But that was really groundbreaking drama, television, 1978.
Yes.
And of course it was set in the 1930s.
Yeah.
And I mean, Dennis Potter was quirky with his theatre, really. And he had the sort of female roles being mimed by the male actors and vice versa.
Yeah. And that wasn't deliberate. It was only because he and Kenneth Trott, our producer, Kenneth has this passion for 30s music, and I don't think there's a record he doesn't have that was recorded in the 30s, but it stemmed from the fact that the lyrics that Dennis wanted to portray that particular scene. That's what he was looking for. He was looking for the lyrics. And it just so happened that, maybe that particular song was sung by a man. But the part in Pennies was played, say, by myself, playing Joan, but the lyrics were apt for what that character wanted to say. And that was why. It wasn't a deliberate thing of the men being women, singing with women's voices and vice versa.
Well, looking at the musical side of your career then, Gemma, you've starred in several musical specials. Quite a few Noel Cards, actually, song by song. You mentioned that, of course. And Present Laughter and Private Lives, you did that tour.
Yes.
But also, of course, your own This Is Your Life. 4 guest appearances, no less, on the Morecambe and Wise show, and 2 Royal Variety performances. First of all, was it a real surprise, This Is Your Life, and did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I did, actually. I did. I would have enjoyed it more if I hadn't had to go back and do an evening show. Because...
You mean you had no party afterwards?
No. Everybody else did. Oh, everybody else had a whale of a time. But they got me after the matinee of their playing our song. And it was Eamon Andrews, who was absolutely lovely. And the researchers were telling me that they actually could have done a 2-hour This Is Your Life on me because they had such a hoot. And doing all the research, it took them longer to do research for me than it has done on anybody else. Because Eamon, you see, went to school with my uncle in Dublin. So he knew some of my family. And every time they went over to Dublin, they got the researcher drunk. So she had to keep going back because she used to forget to write the notes down. And she just said, oh, I'm going to have to go back there, I think it was an excuse myself. But it was fantastic. It really was. I was a bit worried because I thought, oh, no, I hope it's not one of those awful show-busy ones because I can't bear them, I mean. And first of all, I said to Eamon, but when we were in the car going to the theatre, I said, well, whose life is it? He said, it's yours. I said, but it can't be mine. I'm too young. I haven't had a life. I was 31. It was ridiculous. But anyway, we had a real hoot, and it was a real family-orientated one, which was great. But then they all went off and had the most incredible party, and I went back to do an evening show.
You said that you're native-born in Dublin, are you?
Yes, yes.
But when did you lose the accent?
I think after 6 weeks being at school, the most horrendous school in Holloway, when I first came over to London. I was sent. I'd come from a convent school in Dublin to this horrendous school in Holloway for 6 weeks, and children are bad enough anyway, but I had the mickey taken out of me, something shocking, because I still wore my school uniform from the school in Dublin. Oh, and it was a mixed school, which I wasn't used to, and I thought, right, okay, if you can't beat them, join them. But it came in very handy anyway. But I still have my accent with my mum and my relatives and what have you.
Of course. Looking back, because you can look back a little bit more legitimately now.
I can. Yes.
I mean, what appeals to you most then, or is it just the fact that there's another role to sort of fill the coffers? I'm sure they don't need to be filled now, but
they do, with 2 husbands behind me. That's the trouble when you're the successful partner.
I mean, that's very American if the woman has to sort of,
At least I can laugh about it.
But which do you prefer, the theatre, the film, or television?
Oh, I don't have a preference, because they are so very different. They really are. As I was explaining, it's the disciplines that are so different. Theatre is wonderful because it's instant. You get feedback from your audience straight away, which is, I think, probably the most rewarding. Whereas film and television, by the time it goes out, you've forgotten you've even done it.
If you don't win an award and go to one of these, tremendous sort of shows, etc., that they have on television now,
I can't. I'm terribly antisocial.
Then there is no actual physical sort of feeling that you've done well.
No, there isn't. Until you sort of get it on video or something.
Now, how important are directors? I mean, they must be important, or they wouldn't have a role for a director. But what do you expect exactly from a director? I see that you have worked with John Hurt. Again, that was in Dublin.
Yes, it was.
What was he like? And of course, there's Alan Ayckbourn. You've worked with him.
Yes, I did.
Legendary.
Yes, I did the original Chorus of Disapproval at the National Theatre, and Alan directed that. That was wonderful, because again, that was a great role. But it was a great comedy role. See, I love doing comedy. I adore comedy, and I've been very fortunate to have worked with Alistair Sim and Leonard Rossiter.
Leonard Rossiter.
Yes,
Miss Jones and Rising Damp.
Yes. Well, sadly...
you worked with him in Loot.
That's right. We did Loot in the West End. And again, I got an award
praised.
for that.
Yes, you did. Best comedy actress.
Yes, which was wonderful. But the sad part of that was that... And it was a hugely successful show. It really was. It was so successful, we moved to a bigger theatre in Shaftesbury Avenue. And very sadly, it was during that he died. And in fact, I found him.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, it was horrendous. I found him in the dressing room, and he'd missed his entrance on stage. And Leonard never misses an entrance, ever. So they brought the curtain in, and we thought, well, what's happened? And they said, well, we can't find Leonard. I said, well, what do you mean you can't find him? I said, he's in his dressing room. I said, well, we don't know. We knocked. I said, no. So I went around, and because his dressing room and mine were next door to each other, and I just went in, and very sadly, he was dead in the chair. And we got the ambulance out and everything, and everybody was absolutely just devastated. Really, was.
Did the management advise the audience? What do they do in a situation like that?
No, they went out and they just said we have a problem backstage, because we didn't know what to do at the time. I mean, it was just such an horrendous shock, and of course, because of the subject matter of the play, we thought, we'll have to cancel the show. And do they offer the people the money back or something?
Well,
what happened, which I found very hard, well, we all found very hard to deal with, was that after 40 minutes, the ambulance came and took Leonard off to the hospital and informed his wife and everything. After 40-odd minutes, because the audience all went into the bar and we paid for drinks for them in the bar, and they made us carry on with the show with the understudy, which I've never forgiven them for, to be honest. None of us have, because we just found that just so horrendous. And they said, oh no, the show must go on. I thought, no, it mustn't, actually. That's an old saying left over from the war, when you tried to keep your audiences, cheerful and happy and forget about what was going on.
Not when somebody dies.
Not when your leading actor has died and the subject matter is about a dead body. And we were all in a state of total shock. I think it's the worst performance I can say that any of us in that cast
I was just about to say, it must have
ever done.
Surely it was your finest performance under the circumstances to do it at all.
I don't know. We just felt it was like painting by numbers,
Robot situation.
Yeah. But the funny thing, just to tag along that, was that afterwards, a few days later, the office had a letter from a member of the audience saying how very sad they were and this, that and the other. But they felt that the delay was so long that they really would like their money back because they'd lost the trail of the play and what it was about. Could they have their money back? So they were sent a letter saying, there's your money, never go to the theatre again.
Well, you do enjoy a joke, and you said actually that you prefer comedy, to tragedy. And always remember Henry Magee, a wonderful actor.
Oh yes,
in Benny
lovely
Hill,
man.
Benny Hill, right?
Yes,
well, he was
man.
a guest on this program, and he said to me, Geraldine, I asked him because he'd first acted in nothing but Shakespeare.
Yes, I know.
And then he went, complete and utter contrast.
Yeah.
And he was such the, quintessential gentleman. He sort of, how his tweed-covered legs just sort of fell over each other, the tall, gangling type. And so polite, And he said, Geraldine, he said, I had to do something. You see, there is no money in tears. It's
Very
comedy.
true.
He said you need to keep the bread on the table, and all
very
that.
True. That's very true.
So
I think that's why really now my partner and myself we're setting up a company of our own, a production company. And next year we're going to start doing plays, some comedy plays,
Where's that going to be based?
Wherever will have us. So watch out for us.
So you've probably just superimposed really what I was going to say is, what next, where from here? But that does it mean then that you won't, if you have an interesting role presented to you, that you won't grab it with both arms?
Oh, I'm sure I will, but I mean, it'll be mix and match, like it always has been. But unfortunately, in this job, you can't always do what you would really want to do. It's whatever comes along, and
Is there a role that you would very much have liked the chance to do? I mean, for instance, you were in the original presentation of Cats in concert at Andrew Lloyd Webber's Sidmonton Festival, and
Yes.
that's very special, isn't it?
Yeah, they asked me to do that, but I wanted to do. They're playing our song. I was only auditioning for that, but I knew I was right for that. Unfortunately, thank God I did get it. So so there's the rewards there.
You might have been in the West End, of course, with Cats, and
but it would have been a totally different production because the song Memories wasn't in it. You see. So if I'd have been in Cats doing the role, the song Memories wouldn't have been in the show. So it may not have been the success that it actually became. Yeah. So there's always a reason, you see.
I know. I would support that. Well, Gemma Craven, it's been the Isle of Man's good fortune to have had you here at our Gaiety Theatre all this week. And, of course, mine also to have had you on the Geraldine Jamieson interview. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed for having us.